Welcome back to Dreamland. I'm your monthly guest host, Kelly Chase. Whitley will be back in the captain's chair next week. Today, I have a great guest for you, researcher and podcast host James Iandoli. Many of you are likely already familiar with James from his incredible podcast, Engaging the Phenomenon, or from his work in co-hosting the Inquiry into Anomalous Experience and the Phenomenon conference series. James is a skilled and thoughtful researcher who has a particular interest in contact work, which we'll talk about more in this episode. And I also think he's one of the best interviewers in the space. If you haven't checked out his podcast, I hope that you will. His recent interviews with Jim Semivan, Peter Levenda, and Keith Thompson were all standouts. You'll also be able to catch James in the upcoming docuseries that I'm writing and executive producing called The Beyond, UFOs and a New Reality, and that'll be premiering later this fall. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with my friend, James Iandoli. Well, hi, James. Welcome to Dreamland. It's so great to have you here.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Kelly. It's great to be talking to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe we haven't done this on like one of our shows yet after I feel like all our conversations have been in person, which is lovely. But I'm so excited. I've been meaning to have you on for a while, and there's so much I want to talk to you about. So I just want to dive right into it. So to get us started, I'd love to hear, you're somebody who, in this that has been in this field for quite some time, definitely not somebody who like just got here in 2017. So could you maybe talk a little bit, however much you're comfortable with, about kind of what brought you into this field, how you find yourself, in this world of ufology?
Yeah, wow. That is a good question. So, I got involved in the subject of UFOs and even you could say anomalous experiences very early on, just due to experiences that I had. But I also like to consider myself a researcher, but I'm gonna qualify all that. So, from a very young age, like 5, 6, 7, I was having anomalous experiences of a variety, right? I had out of body experiences where I would just be on the verge of sleep, and then all of a sudden, while I'm still conscious, I see myself kind of floating out of my body, and then I look down and I'm looking at myself and I'm like, holy crap, and then boom, I'm back in my body. So when I would have experiences like that, they always stood out to me. I never, as a child, I don't think you even have the rationale at that point at like 5 or 6 to be like, oh, was that real or not? Like, of course it was real because you experienced it, right? So that I had that. And then a kind of like the most jarring was that I was having entity encounters with, you can call them kind of like shadow beings, but it was highly telepathic. And like, it wasn't just like, oh, I saw some kind of weird shadow thing. First thing before anything was that I sensed the presence. And as I'm sensing the presence, I'm kind of looking over and I see a kind of shadow type entity that has like a very soft glow to it. And the first thing that I heard was, he can see us. And that really freaked me out because I saw the one initially, and then there were 3 altogether, and they were moving and like almost collapsed into an orb. And then at that point, I'm covering myself in blankets, freaking out, and I hear almost kind of like gibberish, right? But I can like sense the communication behind it. It was like, you ever saw that movie, The Knowing, with Nicolas Cage? Like whoever designed that, I don't think that was just like a random thing they just made up, because it's so on point. The whisper people and that kind of whispering thing is like, that's what I heard audibly. Like there was an audible sound to it, but but there was a telepathic component, which was like, I was trying to shut it out, right? Like panicking, basically. And this happened, over a half dozen times, but, periodically. It wasn't like every night. It would happen spontaneously, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing I did that initiated it. It was just random, so to speak, whatever is random. So, because of the experiences like the out-of-body experiences, those kind of entity experiences, and at the time, there was no connection for me to UFOs for those entities. I was thinking, oh my God, it's like a ghost or spirit, or I don't know. I still don't know what it is, but it wasn't until many years after that I had even considered that it was associated with the UFO phenomenon. After I began doing research, even at a very young age, and I live in the Hudson Valley area, right? So the Hudson Valley UFO wave happened around the time I was born. So the area kind of had this kind of presence or, vibe to it, I guess you can say. And, there were several thousand people here who had sightings and experiences that were, some of which were outlined in a book by Dr. J. Allen Hynek's last book, which was co-authored with a gentleman named Philip Imbrogno, called Night Siege, the Hudson Valley UFO Wave. And, I remember I got my hands on that book even in, I must have been like 12 or 13 or so, but because I had those experiences, among others, I was always interested in these kind of topics, from, whether it be psychic phenomena or, out of body experiences and even UFOs. And I had a number of UFO sightings when I was younger as well, but they were not profound in the sense where it was like, wow, I said that there was like a metal disc or anything like that involved, which ended up happening in 2007. But I had seen objects in the sky, and I even took one of those old, those like cameras you get at CVS or one of those stores, and like I would go out at night trying to take pictures of them, and I would go on my roof and do it, or I'd go walk out in the neighborhood at night and trying to take pictures of these like orb-like objects in the sky, which I never actually developed. I was just like in my own mind, it was my version of trying to capture something. But yeah, again, with all that said, I was always interested in the subject and all like the anomalous kind of topics from a very young age. And so from a young age, I had already been, reading books. And then of course I had the kind of like one at that point in the 90s, there was like the one-off, Unsolved Mysteries and those kind of shows where it'd be like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning and they're playing some kind of late night UFO program. So I had that kind of background. And then it wasn't until about 2007 when I had some really kind of in your face UFO encounters, which brought the UFO topic front and center for me.
That's so interesting. I love that you brought up the movie Knowing. I only recently watched it and I was surprised because I love Nicolas Cage and I love kind of like disaster movies. And I was like, how have I never seen this? And then once I saw it, I was like, oh, this is why I've never seen it, because it was actually whoever wrote that like knew what they were talking about. Like there is a lot of stuff in there, I think, for people who are familiar with this field that are like, oh, somebody who knew their stuff wrote this movie for sure.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. What was it like for you? Because I want to hear about those other experiences, but what was it like for you in your younger years, having these experiences that were kind of so different and outside of the box? Did you have people in your life that you were able to talk to about that stuff? Or was that something you just kind of kept to yourself? What was that like?
So, I'd mentioned it to my friends, and some of my friends were interested in maybe I would say probably the EST kind of stuff. Not so much UFOs, but I never considered it strange at that point because it happened to be so young. So I never felt like embarrassed to talk about it. Except maybe the entity thing, mostly because that it was scary, pretty pretty much frightening. And I want to say it was not frightening in the sense that I felt threatened or that I was threatened. The idea itself of some kind of entity in my room was really scary, but I was never harmed or threatened or anything by any kind of entity. It was just, I guess maybe you can say ontological shock or like, what the hell is going on? Just at the same as if you were in your backyard and you see glowing eyes and it's some animal and you don't know what it is, you might be like, oh my God, what is that kind of thing? Hopefully not a bear or something, but that kind of, the idea of something unknown in your presence can be scary.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm an adult and I feel like that would freak me out. So totally understandable. So you mentioned you had some experiences kind of like in like sort of the late aughts. You want to talk about those a little? Those seem to be a little more impactful in terms of changing the kind of trajectory of things for you.
Yeah. So those experiences, I mean, when I was younger, like those experiences were certainly impressionable, but I was very young. So when this happened, it was in 2007. So at that point, I'm 20 years old, and they were kind of really in your face and undeniable, and more certainly tied to UFOs. And there was a lot of high strangeness, and it all seemed to be tethered together